what I fucking tell you, this fucking camera pisses me off. When the video freezed mid-frame, I look like I was sniffing a fart. So, back to the show. So I guess I don't have to worry about that first part because it didn't go over 15 minutes. So I'll just continue on from here. But continuing on with the Blu-rays that you haven't seen yet before. So here we go. Let me put those back over here. Actually put Maniac and Drive back over here. Put those there. Okay. I picked this one up today, but from Best Buy. The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It. I still think it's a pretty solid installment in the Conjuring franchise. I like the idea where it's sort of like them trying to use a demonic possession as a legal defense in court, which is based on a true story, which is pretty interesting. This time, though, not directed by James Wan. It's directed by Michael Chavez or something like that. I think he's a guy that worked with James Wan before on the first two. I could be wrong, but it's definitely a step down from the first two films because it's definitely missing that direction that James Wan brings to the films. You don't really feel like that creepy atmosphere that James Wan brings, and you can definitely tell when it's James Wan's direction with the way some of the camera angles are and things like that. This one doesn't really have much of any of that, but it's still a very solid installment. It's still got some creepy elements into it. I still think Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson do a good job as the Warrens. Thought it was a pretty interesting story. So that's The Conjuring 3. Next one here, some Scream Factory titles I picked up, but the double feature of Scanners 2, The New Order, and Scanners 3, The Takeover. Both of these are really fun sequels. Of course, these are the sequels to the David Cronenberg film Scanners, which I like. Although I like the sequels even more because I think they're just pure fun, gory entertainment, and I even like Scanner Cop as well. I like Scanner Cop, the first one, but I really like the sequels of Scanners 2 and 3. I think they're fun, they're entertaining, they're gory. But I do like the first Scanners, though, by David Cronenberg. But I feel like I like the sequels just a bit more because of their entertainment and gore and things like that. And it's a nice little double pack. Another Scream Factory title that I picked up I was really excited for this one. Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Now, if you really want to see like a clever horror film in more recent years, definitely watch this one. One of the better clever horror films, where basically you have a guy who, excuse me, I am sorry for the cough. You have this character named Leslie Vernon, who's this character here, and he claims that he's going to be the next Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger, so he ends up having a documentary crew come follow and film him, and it shows him preparing for the night and choosing his weapon and what weapon he's going to use, and he's going to create his own urban legend. He's picking out his victims, and he's showing how he's going to kill his victims, and you even sort of have a Dr. Loomis sort of character played by Robert Englund. You also have people you have Zelda Rubinstein, Carol Ann, that from the original Poltergeist. Scott Wilson, of course, Herschel from The Walking Dead, may he rest in peace. This is a really highly entertaining, clever film. If you want to, this is sort of around the. When I think of clever horror films in recent years, I always think of this and Tucker and Dale vs. Evil in sort of the same category. But if you want to see a really clever horror film, definitely watch Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Another Scream Factory one, The Ambulance. Been picking up a lot of Scream Factory titles, as you can see, but The Ambulance is a criminally underrated movie directed by Larry Cohen, may he rest in peace, where you basically have Eric Roberts, who plays a guy who's who works for Marvel Comics, which is pretty cool. In the event of appearance by Stan Lee, may he rest in peace. So basically, he ends up meeting this woman on the streets, and she collapses, and an ambulance comes by, and he tries to go look for her in all these hospitals, and no one has any records of her. No one knows where she's at. And it's sort of like this thing where this weird ambulance thing here, something like they kidnap the woman and things like that. You even have James Earl Jones as a cop who Eric Roberts tries to get help from. I don't want to give too much away about it, but very well done flick by Larry Cohen. Very interesting plot too, very unique. Next one here, also a Scream Factory title, Body Parts. Underrated movie by Eric Red, who did Bad Moon, who directed Bad Moon, and he also wrote the original Hitcher as well. This is basically about, you have this guy who's a criminal psychologist played by Jeff Fahey, who gets into his car accident and he gets a brand new arm, but this arm sort of like has its life of its own, and you find out that this arm that they mutated onto him, that he got a new arm from, belonged to a serial killer. Sort of like in a way this arm is like possessed in a way. Sort of like in the vein of like Idle Hands, before Idle Hands, but instead of the hand, it's the arm. Sort of like sort of like a blueprint sort of for Idle Hands later, a few years later. It's a pretty cool little horror flick directed by Eric Red. I think it's well directed. Pretty cool supporting cast, like you have Brad Dourif in here, and you have a few other people in here too. Paul Ben Victor. But underrated horror film, Body Parts. Next one here is a film I haven't seen yet before, but Killer Movie. I got this for dirt cheap. Sort of like it's like a slasher film that takes place on the set of this movie, and these people are getting killed off on the film set, and it's sort of like a mystery of who it is. You have Kaylee Cuoco from 8 Simple Rules and was Penny on The Big Bang Theory. Jason London, who's in... You look up Jason London, he's been in a lot of movies. Nestor Carbonell, who was the mayor in The Dark Knight. But I haven't seen it yet, though, so I don't really have much to say about it. Scooby-Doo on Blu-ray, the first film. I remember seeing this in theaters back in the day when it came out back in 2002. I enjoyed it in theaters, and I still do enjoy it to this day. Even though there are, like, the CGI on Scooby-Doo itself is not that great. Yeah, the special effects don't really hold up really that well. They didn't really hold up back then, and they definitely don't hold up now. But I like the cast. I like Matthew Lillard as Shaggy. I thought he was fantastic. I like Freddie Prinze Jr., Linda Cardellini. And it was cool to see people like Rowan Atkinson in here, Mr. Bean himself. But, fun movie. Another Scream Factory title here that was pretty cool I picked up was Hackers. Didn't even know this had a Blu-ray from Scream Factory, which is pretty cool. 20th anniversary edition. Great cast: Johnny Lee Miller, Angelina Jolie, Fisher Stevens, Matthew Lillard. Who hasn't seen Hackers? If you're a big fan of like 90s films, this is definitely one you got to check out. Not going into a whole lot of details about some of these because I have a lot more to say about more than others. Now, this one here I was really surprised by. It was a film from last year, and if I would have seen this before we did the best and worst of 2020, I probably would have put this on my list. But Disturbing the Peace. Now, pretty underrated flick with Guy Pearce. Now, basically, what this film is about is that you have Guy Pearce's character, who's a marshal in this small town, who years ago had a partner, and he accidentally shot his partner when his partner was being held hostage by this killer, and he vowed to never hold a gun again. Like, basically, the guy was in a coma for years and he never came out of it, and he ended up dying, his partner. So then Guy Pearce is sort of like in a depression. Then it's years later, and he vows to never like hold a gun again because of what happened. So he decides to keep peace in the small town that he still is at without a gun. He even has like sort of like a relationship with the diner owner, this lady, and he has a brand new partner. And then basically what ends up happening is that you have this biker gang come into town, these outlaw bikers, headed by Devon Sawa, of all people. Devon Sawa, you have from Final Destination, Idle Hands. They come into the town and they want to steal this money from this bank and pull a heist. There's like an armored truck gonna come into town. They're gonna steal money and they're gonna rob the bank. It's sort of like a little heist that's going on, and Guy Pearce sort of like has to use his wits to outsmart the bikers, and his partner has to help him out. And then it comes to a point where Guy Pearce sort of like has to hold a gun again, and things like that, and go to town on the bikers pretty much. It's a pretty good flick in my opinion. Doesn't deserve the low rating it gets in IMDb. It gets like a 3.2 or something. I don't think it's that low. I've seen much worse films than that one, trust me. But it's a pretty good movie. Another Scream Factory title, Serial Mom. Pretty fun, dark comedy where Kathleen Turner sort of like plays this perfect wife of this family, but in like outside of her family, like she has like violent tendencies, where if you piss her off or do something wrong that she doesn't like, she'll kill you or do something bad. It's a pretty fun dark comedy by John Waters. You have Kathleen Turner, you have Sam Waterston, Ricky Lake, Matthew Lillard as her son. I think it was the first film that Matthew Lillard got to act in before Scream and all that stuff. And Kathleen Turner steals the show in this as the psycho woman. She does a great job. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back on Blu-ray, which is pretty cool. I know this was out of print from the previous one that released this, but I know this was a re-release on Blu-ray. So I figured I'd pick it up on Blu-ray. Love this movie. It's my favorite Kevin Smith film. Another Scream Factory title. Of course, I had to pick this up. The Dead Zone. Like I said, these are from like a while back, so this is why there's a lot of stuff here. But The Dead Zone. Oh my god, excuse me. I'm sorry for the burp. But very solid Stephen King adaptation. Also directed by David Cronenberg. I would say this is one of David Cronenberg's best films. I say like my top 3 are The Fly, Videodrome, and this film. Christopher Walken plays a guy who goes into a coma, and then he wakes up years later, and he has like these powers where he can predict the future, and all kinds of little subplots here and there, things like that. Of course, the original poster. Great cast of people. You have Christopher Walken, you have Tom Skerritt from Alien, you have Martin Sheen. A great cast of people. The Dead Zone. Excellent flick. I got this from Kino Lorber, but Bustin' Loose. Got this for the Richard Pryor collection on Blu-ray. I was getting a lot more Richard Pryor stuff on Blu-ray. Like I recently got, what was it? Well, I mean, one of the only films I got of his on Blu-ray other than See No Evil, Hear No Evil. But this is a really fun flick for Richard Pryor, Bustin' Loose. Always thought this was a fun movie. This one here, I was really excited that I got a Blu-ray, but it was a little kind of a downfall, like a little bit of a flaw, though, with this release. But Saving Silverman on Blu-ray. Underrated as hell comedy that I think is hilarious. I know my buddies Rob and Dan are really big fans of this film, and I agree. Like I said, the flaw with this thing, it's the PG-13 cut. It's not the R-rated cut. So I'm going to keep my DVD because that is the R-rated cut, and this isn't. And I actually prefer the R-rated cut. So, but it's still nice to have this on Blu-ray by Mill Creek Entertainment. You know, Jason Biggs, Steve Zahn, Jack Black, Amanda Peet, Arlie Ermy, may rest in peace, Arlie Ermy from Full Metal Jacket.